Hi, welcome to the channel. So today I'm reacting to a video from Infinite Ltd. This is the fearless Indian major who led 120 men against 6,000 Chinese. This is all about the Battle of Rezangla, which is one of India's most famous battles. Let's get to it.
It's early morning on the 18th of November 1962. C Company of the 13th Battalion of the Indian Army's Kumaon Regiment occupies the frigid 5,000 meter or 16,000 foot Himalayan mountain pass known as Rezangla. The wind howls through the frozen peaks, chilling the men of C Company to the bone. In one of the nullahs ahead, C Company spots movement, the forward elements of a Chinese force, vastly superior in numbers, but perhaps not in courage and skill. Leading C Company is the stalwart battalion commander, Major Shaitan Singh. He knows the company is isolated from the rest of the battalion due to the terrain, so he knuckles down and prepares his men for the fight of their lives. In this episode of The Braved, we tell the tale of one man's bravery and sacrifice during the Sino-Indian War, an underratedly bloody conflict between India and China that took place in 1962. Let's get straight into it. Shaitan Singh Bhate was born in the village of Banasar in the northern Indian state of Rajasthan in 1924. As with
Just something interesting, his first name actually means devil, whereas Singh actually means lion.
many heroes we cover in this channel, war was in his blood, with his father serving in France during the First World War. Shaitan Singh went to Chopasni Senior Secondary School in Jodhpur, which, according to author Kittu Reddy, is famous for its Spartan discipline and achievements in sports and produced many brave soldiers. After that, Shaitan Singh went to college, then in August 1949 signed up for the Jodhpur State Forces. After Jodhpur was merged into the Indian Union, Shaitan Singh was transferred to the aforementioned Kumaon Regiment, an infantry regiment established in 1813 and still active to this day. By November 1955, Shaitan Singh was a captain. He served in the ethnic conflict in Nagaland in northeastern India, a 63-year war that still hasn't come to a close, and also in the December 1961 annexation of Goa against the Portuguese Indians in the territories of Goa, Daman and Diu.
Goa is now famous for its beaches, and this conflict that he's talking about in Nagaland is actually between the Indian government and some ethnic Nagas who actually want Nagaland to be independent from India.
Proving himself in these conflicts, Shaitan Singh was promoted to the rank of Major in June 1962. It wasn't long after his promotion that Shaitan Singh found himself facing off against the Chinese at Rezangla. Before we get there, however, it's important we set the scene. We've actually covered the Sino-Indian War on our Big Brother channel, The Front, but for those of you who haven't seen that video, India and China were fighting a war over their borders before the Sino-Indian War and are still fighting over them today. The Sino-Indian border is basically split into three sectors by Nepal and Bhutan, two smaller countries sandwiched between India and China. Most of the Chinese territory touching the border includes what is known today as the Tibet Autonomous Region. In 1950, the People's Republic of China invaded and annexed Tibet. Now the expansionist Chinese were even closer to India, and India saw this as a potential threat. Tensions rose in 1957 after India discovered that China had been building a road through contested Indian territory. 12 years later, during the failed 1969 Tibetan uprising, the Chinese believed Tibet's 14th Dalai Lama had been allowed to flee into India.
Is the Dalai Lama still living in India?
After some small skirmishes in which some Indian policemen were killed, both sides started preparing the border with military outposts. Things reached a boiling point on the 10th of October 1962 when as many as 1,000 Chinese soldiers surrounded and attacked an outpost manned by 50 Indians. The Indians lost half of their men and withdrew. On the 20th, the Chinese People's Liberation Army launched an attack over the Himalayas, and thus began the Sino-Indian War of 1962. The mountain pass Rezangla is located in the Chushul Valley within the western sector.
So that is actually on or very near the line of actual control, the LAC, which you don't want to get confused with the LOC, the line of control, which is what separates India's J&K from Pakistan.
A section of the sino-Indian border between Nepal and Pakistan. On the 18th of October 1962, the fourth last day of the Sino-Indian War, Shaitan Singh made contact with the Chinese. At 5 a.m., the Chinese force spotted advancing through the nullahs comes into range, about 350 soldiers strong. Shaitan Singh has just 122 men at his disposal. On Shaitan Singh's command, C Company opens fire with mortars, grenades, LMGs and rifles. The smoke clears and now the nullahs are full of shredded corpses. The Chinese soon regather though, answering with an intense bombardment of mortar and artillery shells. C Company takes heavy casualties. In the wake of the bombardment, the Chinese advance. Closer now, within 90 meters or about 300 feet, Shaitan Singh's men open fire, ripping the Chinese to ribbons. For a moment, it seems like the attack is over, the day won. Then, a Chinese force of some 400 men assault C Company from the rear, running into the barbed wire fencing surrounding the Indian position. Struggling to get through the fence, a ceaseless dialogue of mortar and artillery shells begins, the Indian 3-inch mortar shells inflicting heavy casualties on the Chinese. Shaitan Singh moves from platoon to platoon, leading C Company's surely hopeless defense and boosting the morale of his men, who are dying in the snow all around him.
That is what good leaders did. You saw the same thing in Band of Brothers in episode 7, The Breaking Point, when First Sergeant Lipton was running around from foxhole to foxhole.
An additional group of 120 Chinese soldiers attack from the rear and advance on number 7 platoon, which enters with intense mortar fire, reducing 120 men to just 20. The surviving 20 rush number 7 platoon and the Indians emerge from their trenches and engage the Chinese in hand-to-hand combat. When that part of the skirmish is over, not a man from number 7 platoon is left standing. Still rallying his platoons, the wind is knocked from Shaitan Singh and he collapses to find several bullet wounds in his belly and arms. For every Indian killed, C Company slays 4 or 5 Chinese soldiers. But it's not enough. 2 of Shaitan Singh's men hoist him from the bloody snow and try and carry him to cover. The Chinese are moving in, mopping up the survivors. Shaitan Singh looks at his men and orders them to leave him behind so they might live.
India has 2 disadvantages for this battle. 1, they were outnumbered, and 2, they had no arty support. Artillery fire was just not possible given their actual location and the geography. I can imagine that if India did have the arty support, that this battle outcome would have been different.
Reluctantly, they prop up their dying major against a boulder and run for their lives. 3 months after the action at Rezangla, a Red Cross team uncovered Shaitan Singh's body from the snow, frozen solid against that same boulder, gun in hand. Of C Company's 123 men, 109 were killed, and the 5 that were injured were captured by the Chinese. One of the men who propped Shaitan Singh against the boulder, Ramchandra Yadav, escaped and told the major's tale. Interviewed by Shekhar Guptan, the editor-in-chief of The Print in 2012, Yadav claimed that C Company inflicted as many as 1,300 casualties on the Chinese at Rezangla. Havaldar Nihal Singh, Shaitan Singh's personal guard, also interviewed by The Print, corroborated this number. In Yadav's words, "I saw that with my own eyes. Bodies were lying all around. They were lying scattered like berries in a market." It's difficult to ascertain if either of these figures are accurate, but the Indians estimate that between 5,000 and 6,000 Chinese were involved in the battle. Even if there were just a tenth as many Chinese as that, it would still have been a legendary defense. On the 21st of November, just days after the battle, the Indians and Chinese declared a ceasefire. The action at Rezangla was just too costly for both sides, a microcosm of the Sino-Indian War as a whole.
So a few reasons why this battle was significant. 1, it actually saved an airport in Ladakh or Ladakha from being occupied by the Chinese. 2, it slowed down the advance and the momentum of the Chinese army. And 3, it gave China something to think about, that India was a formidable opponent that was not going to go down without a fight.
For his bravery and sacrifice, Shaitan Singh received the param chakra, India's version of a VC, posthumously.
That's equivalent to the United States Medal of Honor.
The citation read, Major Shaitan Singh dominated the scene of operations and moved at great personal risk from one platoon post to another, sustaining the morale of his hard-pressed platoon posts. His supreme courage, leadership, and exemplary devotion to duty inspired his company to fight almost to the last man. We're interested to know what you think though. Addressing the elephant in the room, how many Chinese do you think were involved in the battle, and how many do you think the Indians killed? Had you heard of Major Shaitan Singh before today? Do you know anything about him that we didn't cover in this video? Please let us know all that and more in the comments section below.
I'd be curious to know what China's numbers are, but my utmost respect to all the soldiers that fought and died in that war. Thanks for watching, and if you do want to watch another last stand battle similar to King Leonidas and the 300, then why don't you check out the 1897 Battle of Sarigari, where 21 Sikh warriors actually fought against over 10,000 Afghans.